is Liliana Pantoja, and today I will be talking about the North American Free Trade Agreement. By the end of 1980, the world witnessed the end of the Cold War, with the United States as the maximum world power. On the other hand, Mexico opened up to international trade with technological policies. NAFTA is the commercial agreement between the governments of North America. That includes the United States of America, Mexico, and Canada. Together, these countries make up the largest free trade area on the planet. It took 4 years for the trade agreement to architect and implement, but finally, in 1993, NAFTA was signed by President George H.W. Bush, Mexican President Carlos Salinas de Gortari, and Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. The trade agreement's purpose was to strengthen the relations between the countries of North America in two fundamental aspects. First, the trade agreement's primary goal was to eliminate most taxes. Second, NAFTA allowed for more companies to invest in Mexico to help the country grow exponentially. NAFTA also promoted trade in North America and produced economic growth of the three nations through the systematic elimination of most tariff and non-tariff barriers to trade and investment. In consequence, the trade agreement would generate employment opportunities, improve the performance of the economies, protect intellectual property rights among member countries, and promote conditions of fair competition in the free trade zone. Finally, NAFTA facilitated the cross-border movement of goods and services between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. The institutions responsible for overseeing NAFTA compliance and its tasks was to ensure the proper interpretation and implementation of its provisions. Since NAFTA was approved, the trade and investment levels of the three nations have increased and generated stable and steady economic growth, creation of new jobs, and a greater variety of services and consumer goods at better prices. All of the positive aspects of the aftermath since the signing of the treaty have benefited the businesses, consumers, families, workers, and companies of the three member countries. Trade between the NAFTA countries grew 128% since the agreement came into force, which meant going from $297,000 in 1994 to $676,000 in the year 2000. The three nations trade trilaterally, $1,800 million every day. The free trade zone created by NAFTA represents a potential market of 406 million inhabitants that produces more than $11 billion in goods and services. The progressive elimination of barriers to trade and the opening of markets have favored economic growth and prosperity in the three countries. NAFTA provides businesses in North America with better access to inputs, raw materials, technologies, investment capital, and talent available throughout the region. The progressive elimination of tariffs on imports within the NAFTA zone has led to a reduction in the prices of consumer goods and inputs for production, which benefits businesses and families. The trade liberalization helps producer companies since it favors their competitiveness compared to the rest of the world by enjoying a higher supply of inputs at better prices. During the first 7 years of NAFTA, production in North America grew more than 30% compared to the increase of almost 20% in the 7 years before the entry into the treaty. NAFTA consists of a preamble and 22 chapters grouped into 8 sections. Article 2205 of NAFTA stated that any of the parties, that includes Mexico, the United States, or Canada, can communicate in writing their intention to leave the treaty to participating countries. In other words, the World Trade Organization could begin the process of departure, which could last approximately 6 months. For example, Mexico has become an integral part of North America's motor vehicle industry after the implementation of NAFTA. If Mexico decides to get out of the treaty, it may continue to trade with the United States and Canada, but under other rules different from those of NAFTA's. In the last few months, the United States has threatened to exit NAFTA. If the current United States President Donald Trump meets his repeated threats to end the North American Free Trade Agreement, the economies of the three partners could face critical adverse outcomes. The primary objective of the administration of Donald Trump is to move the United States companies that have settled in Mexico and Canada from where they export their products back to the United States free of tariffs. However, the president's administration does not recognize that a higher rate of robotization in Detroit is less labor intensive, and it does not understand that General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler invest in Mexico and Canada to compete against Asian and European brands. In conclusion, NAFTA has been a treaty for over 20 years, and if it ceases to exist, the three member countries could have economic consequences.